Hey everyone, welcome to the Front Row with Ed. My name is Ed Deboo, physical therapist out of Bellingham, Washington. This is a three-part video series on shoulder injuries. So this is part two. So if you haven't watched part one, if you go to the end of this video, there'll be a link to part one. Make sure you check it out. It talks about what the rotator cuff is, shows you a picture of the muscle, so we're all on the same page. The second video I want to talk about is tests for common injuries of the shoulder. Now, many times you can go to the orthopedic surgeon or the physical therapist, but sometimes you don't have the opportunity to do that. All you know is your shoulder hurts. You want to know what is going on with the shoulder. The first thing I want to talk about, the most common injury that I see is shoulder impingement. And what exactly is impinging? Let's take a look. If you look at the anatomy of the shoulder, this is the clavicle right through here. Back through here is the acromion. Just to make it simple, I'm going to call this the roof. And this is the roof of the shoulder. And what happens is we've got parts of the rotator cuff, like I showed you in part one, that come right through here. We also have a subacromial bursa, which is basically a fluid-filled sac. What happens commonly in a shoulder impingement is we have this bump of the humerus right here. If you notice, it's not completely smooth. With overhead motions, what happens is the top of this bump right here hits the acromion or hits the roof. And that's what gives people that impingement type of pain. When do we experience it the most? With overhead type of motions. A test to determine whether or not you have an impingement would be pain with overhead motions once you get probably past this 90 to 100 degree plane. The second impingement test you can do on yourself, you don't even need anybody else, is take the affected arm and rest it. In this example here, it's going to be my right arm, and I'm resting it in my left elbow. Now, I'm going to slowly put a little bit of downward pressure, and if I start to get pain, then that's also another positive sign of impingement, because once again, what's happening is we're taking this greater tubercle of the humerus and jamming it up against the acromion or the roof. Another way to do this is to go palms down and to come out this way. And if I start to get a little bit of pain up and through there, that's another sign that it could be impinging of my shoulder. Another common injury I see of the shoulder is at the AC joint or the acromioclavicular joint. This is where the clavicle meets the acromion, right up and through here. A couple simple tests you can do to determine whether or not you have AC involvement. Once again, I'm going to use my right arm as an example. If I bring my right arm across my body, a healthy shoulder, what it should feel is just a little bit of a lateral stretch through here. What happens if I have an AC joint issue? I start to get some pain and compression right here at that AC joint, just like I showed you on the model back through here. That's a positive test for some AC joint irritation. Another way to do that is to grab the opposite shoulder. So once again, I'm testing my right arm, and I grab my opposite shoulder here, and I'm going to either lift up or push up with my opposite arm. If that starts to give me some pain in this AC joint here, that's another sign of a positive AC joint irritation. The AC joint is also commonly injured if there's an impact. Imagine being tackled in football or falling and landing on that shoulder and driving that shoulder down, especially when the elbow is tucked in. Oftentimes what happens is you basically hit the edge of this roof and you drive it down. So sometimes too you get what's known as a sulcus sign. So what you can see is a clavicle here, and there's a dip right up through here. And where that dip is indicative of possibly some stretching or maybe tearing of the ligaments that connect the roof to the clavicle right through here. Another sign that you have some AC joint irritation. The third injury that I'm going to talk to you about is a SLAP lesion. And that's an acronym for superior labral anterior to posterior tear. If you notice here, the humeral head is really very big compared to the socket. The socket really isn't very big. So what happens is we have this gasket, almost like it's a labrum that covers this to basically give us a little bit more support for that humeral head, but yet still allow for great mobility of the shoulder. But sometimes that labrum can be torn. It's usually torn in traumatic accidents. Imagine now falling, but instead of having my arm tucked underneath me, it's up overhead and it's jammed down. Another way is a car accident where I have my arms out in front of me and it's jammed up this way. What we're talking about is a tear of the superior or the top part of that labrum. So I'm going to show you three different tests. If only one is tender, then you only have about a 15% chance I wouldn't worry about it. But if 2 or more, then it jumps up between 35 to 65%, and then you may want to go get an ultrasound or an MRI. The first test is we bring an arm out to the side, we rotate thumbs down, and we put a little pressure from the top here down. What that does is puts a little bit of a stretch through that top part of the labrum, and if that's painful, then that's a positive test right there for a SLAP lesion. What does it look like on a real person? You bring your arm out through here, you rotate it down, and either you or someone push down through here, and if it's painful through there, that's a positive sign. The second test I want you to check for is involving the bicep tendon. You're going to have your arm bent through here, and what you'll do is, first of all, this is supination and this is pronation. So I'm going to actively supinate, and I'm going to resist it with my opposite hand. So as I forcefully try to supinate here, if that gives me pain up at my shoulder, that's a second test, that's a second positive test. And the third one I'm going to do is that sulcus sign, a little bit like we talked about for the AC joint. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of traction to the affected arm, and as I traction it down, if that gives me pain in my shoulder, then that's also a positive sign for a SLAP lesion. So remember, if you have all 3 tests that are positive, you've got a great chance you have a SLAP lesion. If there's only one, don't worry about that. Don't worry about it, then you have like a 15% chance, if not less. If 2 or more, then it jumps into that 30 to 60% chance of a SLAP lesion. You may want to go see an orthopod, get an MRI, get an ultrasound to figure something out. So in part 1 of the video series, we covered what the rotator cuff is, what its actions are, and why it's important. The second part, we talked about commonly seen injuries to the AC joint, impingement, and SLAP lesions. Now in the third video, which there'll be a link at the end of this one, I'll talk about how to strengthen the rotator cuff, because regardless of what you have going on, you have to strengthen the rotator cuff.